Welcome back to Hypnagogue. Happy to have you here. Not much housekeeping today. Just want to remind you that this story is available to read on Substack. You can find info on finding that in the show notes. And also, please support the show. You can follow this podcast, leave a 5-star rating, and share this episode with someone who you think would enjoy it. So, without further ado, here's Chapter 5, Lord of All Pieces. An excerpt from On Negotiation, Part 4, Negotiating with Trust. Written by the Chief Executor of the Varick Salvage Company, Ira Vera, 39th of the Face. A good negotiation doesn't take so much muscle as it does dexterity, planting seeds, allowing leverage to fall into place, knowing when to keep the curtains closed and when to draw them back for a glimpse. I trust that when things play out as they should, it will be none of us who actually makes the decision. The decision will be made for us. Strength is an open hand gesturing towards an open door. The waiting room line was a large, dense block of humans folded neatly in on itself. I sauntered up to the tail and began biding my time. In the line were those people whose needs were far clearer, far more articulated than my own. Babies needing their first piccolo vaccines, musicians whose echoing fits had gone chronic, farmers gone taste blind, strained limbs, ear infections, migraines. The woman in front of me was a massage therapist. She had been having tactile hallucinations for months now. She couldn't do her job because it was so debilitating. She was losing income, and quickly. The line moved as slow as topsoil dust across sand dunes, shifting only every so often when a breeze came, and moving only a little at that. I waited. Finally, there was no one in front of me but a barricade fence of receptionists. One of them waved me forward, a man with funky glasses and little plastic piglets lined up along the side of his desk, translucent pinks and greens and blues. Their tiny, blank faces looked up at me. "How might I help you today?" he asked warmly. "I'll take an appointment." "Your name?" "Gabriel." They had old computers secondhand from their sister university in Odilon. He typed in my name, and a long list of Gabriels unraveled across the screen. Gabriel of Hill's End, Gabriel of Yellow Tree, Gabriel Loca, Gabriel Haith, O Gabriels, another O Gabriels, Gabriel Mao, Mao Gabriel, Gabriel Garcia Roberto, Percival Cordelia Gabriel, First Gabriel, Seventh Gabriel, 89th Gabriel, Gabriel who is increasing. So many ways to name a child. The receptionist looked up at me eagerly. "Full name?" he asked. "Yes," I said. There was one person on the list whose name was just Gabriel, and before the receptionist went about thinking it was me, I stopped him. "That's not me," I said. "Are you a new patient here?" "Sure." Just one moment. His hand reached down to open a drawer, from which he unsheathed a thin booklet of papers and a clipboard. He joined the two together and handed them over through the gap under the plexiglass. "If you wouldn't mind, please fill out this intake form. You can return it to me when you're finished." He gestured toward the crowded waiting area where benches and chairs were packed tightly with patients. I looked over my shoulder at the line that wound behind me, the one I'd shortly have to rejoin. I nodded lethargically. "All right," I said. St. Nausea Regional Hospital and Practicing School. Form 1A, Patient Intake Form. 1. Identification. Employer ID. Occupational ID. Full taken/given name. Incarnative cycle number, approximate if unknown. Biological sex. Gender description. 2. Reason for visit. Check all that apply. Annual physical and/or metaphysical. Sensory vaccination. Feeling, quote, not like yourself. Nightmares and/or daydreams. Emotional fatigue or weakness. Insomnia, non-contagious. Insomnia, contagious. Ear ringing. Trouble speaking or understanding speech. Seizures. Fainting or loss of consciousness. Migraines. Environmental, food, or trance allergies. Other. Specify. 3. Recent travel. In the last 60 days, have you traveled through, over, or around the following? Superflow rivers of grade 3 or higher, through, over, around, I don't know. Inanimate fields, black only, through, over, around, I don't know. Gravitational rift canyons, through, over, around, I don't know. Other landmarks of concern, through, over, around, I don't know. If other, please describe. 4. Consent and contact. Next of consent, contractual kinship only. Contractual relationship, employer ID, occupational ID. Medical trance and physical contact consent, circle yes, no, conditional. If conditional, please describe. Patient signature, date. Hospital Union Statute 505(b)(2, hypnagation disclosure invitation. In the last 3 life cycles, have you or someone whom you know had contact with a hypnagated individual? Circle yes or no. Disclosure 99A. Have you undergone a procedure of hypnagation? Circle yes or no. I spent 10 or 15 minutes just looking at the intake form in my lap. Reason for visit. Why was I here? Finding Avrik proved senseless, and now here I was. The construction of a waiting room, the mundanity of 4 walls and the creatures inside it, the back precipice of the last 15 years of my life. I looked around at my fellow creatures. Boredom, restlessness, worry. The people here made up a whirlpool of unhappiness. I could close my mind's eye and let the pool take me down into its winding, polluted waters, but I knew not to let myself stay. I would drown there if I did. The banker to my left was in for an annual exam, and in regards to his being there, he felt no particular way, neither good nor bad. I used his indifference like a piece of rope, hoisting myself up out of the waters until I was finally back in my body, returned to my eyes, my real eyes. I took a pen to the intake form and turned it in. A few minutes later, Lucille, the receptionist, grabbed the form out of my hand with an uttered thank you. She began scanning it to see which department I needed help setting up with. The hypnagation addendum at the bottom didn't catch her eye at first. It wasn't usually there. The hospital never intentionally printed out that addendum, on this form or any other, but she'd been told about it once in training. If a hypnagogated individual ever shows up at this here clinic, Lucille's training manager had always spoken through a mouthful of molasses chew, you'll only know if they tell you. It was while she checked her spelling that Lucille noticed the addendum. She stopped typing and took the paper in both hands. They can be as flamboyant as they can be discreet, but you'll know. If they want you to know, you'll know. It had been 22 years since they'd told her this might happen. She'd nearly forgotten it could. It had seemed so absurd, so unlikely, like running a fire drill in case the roof ever evaporated. Sheepishly, she looked up at the patient, the one who claimed to be hypnagogated. I didn't want to freak her out too much, so I didn't look back down. Instead, I let my gaze amble about, directionless, harmless. A hypnagogue, she thought to herself, then looked up the number to call. After a bit of frenzied hullabaloo back in the exam offices, a woman popped out to receive me. She was panting from her run over here, and she still had an apron on from her last appointment. Lucille whispered hastily at the doctor. "Doctor," she spat. "Apron." The doctor, a woman named Jasmine Le Fraye, perked up and started at the apron tie. She was still pawing at the knot as she ushered me into the back, unconsciously avoiding eye contact. Not that there was much to make eye contact with. I could hardly focus my sight on any object we passed, let alone convey with my eyes anything but despair. As she walked, she anxiously recited a long list of niceties. "A real honor to have you here. Studied hypnagation at university and was licensed. Surprisingly transferable to other areas of medicine. Suppose there's no point in hiding my nerves. Keep talking so that I don't freeze up. Be assured you're in safe hands." She sat me down in one of the rooms, and she began going through the motions of taking my vitals. Her nerves finally smoothed out. "I hope that intake form wasn't too distressing," she said. "I've reasoned with our hospital board for years that we should use any other method for taking in hypnagogated patients than that tedious form. They haven't quite caught on. Your vitals make it look like you're having a panic attack. Are you having a panic attack?" "Something like it," I said. "Right. The last thing a person who's having a panic attack should be asked is any semblance of the question why." "Do hypnagogues only come in for panic attacks?" I said. "Just about. You're a pretty self-sufficient crew. Not speaking from experience, though. You're the second hypnagogated individual I've ever met." A smirk caught the edge of my mouth. "You'd never get hired in any other field with that much experience." She laughed. "Pretty minuscule by number, but that's all it took to turn my life upside down. Must count for something. It at least counted for a certificate." Now she was wrapping my wrist up in gauze. I must have broke something, maybe when I was with Sifra? I couldn't recall. The last few days had turned to shadow. "We don't make ourselves very easy to study," I winced, pulling my wrist back to my side. "You weren't wincing when you came in here," she observed. "How much have you been dissociating from your body lately?" I thought of the waiting room whirlpool, of harnessing Sifra, of becoming the earth. "Not much," I said. She looked skeptical. "Hypnagogues are terrible liars," she said. "You believe us anyways." She snipped the gauze, tied it into place, then retreated into her chair so she was no longer hovering over my bandaged limb. Her face had softened, and despite her fear, she now looked me in the eyes with a gentle courage I could not bear. I began to cry. She said nothing, did nothing. It was nice, the silence. There was no undercurrent of expectation, no pull on my senses. I took a long, shaky drag through my lungs and gathered my words. I've experienced a complete ontological disintegration. My friend is dead, and I fear I have irreparably damaged the gravitational integrity of this country you live in. Her mind, the mind of a crisis room doctor, sifted through this information easily. Your friend is dead? She asked. My body shook with grief. I fought for control of my vocal cords. His name was Elufeus. I am not sure anymore he even existed. I came here to track down his son. I found him, of course I found him, but it means nothing. She recognized the symptom. The weight of co-creation, she said. I nodded. You know what's funny? He was standing right at the front door, like he was waiting for me there. Hypnagation brings many affecting forces. You can pull people into your path, unreal people, real people too. That's the issue, I said. Unreal or real, I'm fixated. I didn't used to care. Unreal or real, I just didn't. She smiled. Sounds blissful. Blissful, yes. And kind of bleak, to be honest. And hard to sustain past a day's worth of thinking. Oh? But then I met my friend. Elufeus, she said. I wagged my head side to side. He had a thick skull about it. Didn't matter to him, he couldn't prove it. Not even after I told him myself it's impossible. He knew he was real, down to his bones. And now I'm here, trying to prove a dead man's wish true. More crying. I lost it, I said. I had it. I swear. So many times. She then quoted from a crisis manual, a knee-jerk reaction she regretted immediately. You have yourself still, she said. Sure, I said spitefully. A head and an ass and some limbs. Just a bunch of junk I need to put somewhere. Even if I'm rid of them for a moment, I always end up needing to put them fucking somewhere. I threw my arms down, a petulant child. Gabriel, she hesitated. I looked absolutely miserable. She swallowed and braced herself. Gabriel, may I ask what stage of hypnagation you're at? Silence. She waited patiently while I mulled over whether to tell her or not. At last, I looked up into her delicate expression. I wiped the tears from my eyes. End stage, I said. Doctor Jasmine quickly reined in her reaction, letting her gaze trail down the side of my face and off me completely. I see, she said. You're tired. It's not like that. It wasn't. I chose it before I lost. His name now slipped from my memory. Before I lost it, this time, there was a time I was ready. It had nothing to do with grief or fear or any of that. I swear. It's your life, she offered graciously. When an individual chooses to enter the end stage of hypnagation, they're not required or expected to have any particular reasons. I know, I said, I know. But I don't want you to think it was like that. Not for me. I had peace. Is that what you lost? Huh? Oh, I don't know. I pressed my teeth down into my tongue just enough to hurt. I always thought I'd get stronger, but I never wanted to be here again. I've been weak. It's been the truth this whole time. Everything ached. I squeezed my eyes shut, hardly able to bear it anymore. I didn't want to be here. I didn't want to be anywhere. As I fell into silence, and as the silence stretched on, Dr. Jasmine started to shift, thinking about what treatment she would prescribe me, what her final words might be before going. It was the trained pattern of a doctor on payroll, a doctor on an appointment schedule. I panicked and knew that if I kept talking, she'd stay just a little bit longer. I think there's a nice thing about money, I said, wearing a bizarre smile. Even these jobs that are like shackles for you all most of the time. You don't have to think too much about where to go. There's only so many options. After I said this, she thought of her patients, the ones who couldn't afford their appointments and procedures. She thought of the moments she'd missed back home, caring for old Miss Mabel or little Solveig and Marin, all while she was taking care of someone else. But Dr. Jasmine quite liked her job. Tending to the sick was as rewarding a vocation as one could hope for, she thought. Not many days went by when she did not feel grateful. She was needed here, and that's what gave her peace every day. Shackles, chains, anchors. She remembered what she'd been told about hypnagogues and repeated it now. A hypnagogue often feels cast away, she said. I wiped the snot from my nose and nodded. Just then, the pager on Dr. Jasmine's wrist beeped, calling her away to the next patient. Gabriel, you're welcome to stay at St. Nausea's for as long as you'd like, though I doubt you want to spend much more time here. Candidly, if I were you, I would leave. There's a lot of kindness in this building, but it's also heavy with grief. She reached down and opened the bottom drawer of the doctor's desk and pulled out a folded brochure. Across it was written, Map of the Upper White Plains. I would prescribe you a general hypnagogic agita and common depression. The most successful treatment in almost every case is wilderness exposure. At your age, you've probably been through this before, and you can remember just how effective it is. There are a number of natural areas within walking distance from here. I trust that if you go to them and spend some time, you will feel better. However, if you do not, you know where to find me. She wheeled her wheelie stool away from the desk and stood up just as the beeper went off again. Regretfully, she stood up. It was a pleasure meeting you, Gabriel. I wish you very well. I exchanged the niceties, took the map out of her hands, and then she was gone. There was an ant outside, in the ditch, alone, scouting out the area before it returned to its hill. His little body crawled along over dead blades of grass, bits of broken off tree bark, pieces of trash. I considered following it, wherever it was going, even into the gutter. I could do anything except stop existing. And that was the only thing I wanted to do. The old woman, Daisy, was getting wheeled out of the clinic now. Her kinster, the brown-haired woman, was pushing her wheelchair and mentally calculating how they would cover the tests the doctor had just ordered. There was nearly enough in Daisy's savings to pay for it, but that was enough to wipe her out completely. Maybe she could take some money out of her own account, just enough to cushion the blow. Or maybe it was time to book a reincarnation assessment. I pressed myself. Make them rich, I told myself. Make them rich now! They just kept rolling across the parking lot towards their vehicle, as slow as the ant. What the hell would they do when the first gravity tremors hit? It wasn't even up to them if they were protected, let alone insured. I prayed their landlord had half a heart. I prayed even more their landlord had the budget. There's a nice thing about money. How ignorant I was to say such a thing. With my head still buried in my knees, I heard a voice. Did you pick a spot out? It asked. I looked up, squinting into the bright white sky, blotted out the face above me. She gestured toward the map she had given me. It was in my lap, still folded up, the seal alongside the foredge still glued shut. Dr. Jasmine. I shook my head. No. She nodded, then sat down beside me and reached her hand out for the map, pausing as if for permission. I handed it off easily. She unfolded it while I stared back down into the ditch. Dr. Jasmine set the map down on my lap and pointed to a little dot nuzzled against the curve of one blue amorphous blob. There were thin, light-handed letters crawling over it, like little bugs. The Lake Anne Oryx property. This spot on Lake Anne is about a 15-minute walk from here, probably the closest tract of outdoor space. It's nice. I've brought my girls there before, and they like it. She let go of the map. Thank you, I said. Gabriel, do you have somewhere to stay tonight? I'll be fine, I said. For all that mattered, I could walk the streets through the night if I had to. There was nothing I'd ever needed in this life. Nothing I couldn't conjure up on my own. And anyways, I'd already resigned myself to following the ant. I heard once that people who've been hypnagogated find the company of children to be very enjoyable. Have you found that to be true? I thought of the children at Elufeus's funeral poking his dead and stinky body. I actually laughed, a rogue bubble coming up for air. I have. Dr. Jasmine shifted her seat on the concrete. Her butt was too bony for this, she thought, starting to get sore. She tamped down the discomfort to keep talking with me. I live a little ways from here, on a kid's stead outside of town. There's about a dozen of us. Our two youngest kinsters, Solveig and Mara, and their little girls right now. They're angels most of the time. She paused to look at me, trying to gauge for any signs of interest. I think the tract of land we're on is really pretty. Tall grass, big cottonwood trees, deer, swallows, chipmunks galore. An image flashed in her mind, a memory from the other day, a cute little chipmunk scurrying across her lap. It had surprised her. Plus, we back right up against the Windwoods Forest Reservation. A suggestion off the books, she thought. You could continue on from there easily. She paused, letting the offer settle in for a moment. Then she asked, "Would you like to come and join us for dinner?" Truly, Dr. Jasmine had only ever met one other hypnagogue, or hypnagogated person as professional medical vocabulary encouraged. She had met them at university while completing the capstone seminar which officially licensed Jasmine as a Level 1 hypnagation specialist. Ilaria, a hypnagogated professor, led the seminar. Ilaria was a playful, cryptic professor, and the first hypnagogue any of them would ever meet. For most of the students, they were also the last, but not for Jasmine. Not anymore. I rode in the bucket seat, low to the ground, feeling every lump and pothole on the road. Jasmine was thoroughly embarrassed not to have a more dignified carriage to drive me around in, but the only thing worse, she felt, would have been to ask me to drive. She sat up high to my left, trying hard to keep her eyes on the road rather than gawking down at me where I was, folded up like a little porcupine in a basket, bumping along down the road. Professor Ilaria's class had been one of the most captivating experiences of Jasmine's whole life. She easily recalled every lecture, every discussion, every note Professor Ilaria had ever left beside her exam answers. She'd once advised them on the somewhat paralyzing amazement that comes naturally when someone realizes they're in the presence of a hypnagogated person, and someone who can read their every thought. In these moments, conversation becomes a salve, allowing the mind to continue forward momentum. Once you are aware of the hypnagogue's presence, you may easily freeze up and fall into a thought loop, Professor Ilaria had advised them. Oh my, they can read my thoughts, you think. Oh my, they can read that thought too. I assure you, this is as uncomfortable for a hypnagogue as it is for you. The best thing for most people in situations is to take the thoughts outward. Verbalize them. Don't be embarrassed to rattle on in front of a hypnagogue. For us, it's not too different from hearing you think. And if it gets us out of the loop, that's what we'd prefer too. Somewhat clumsily, Dr. Jasmine now fell back on this technique. I've told my family a lot of stories about my time with Ilaria, she said, and ever since then I've come up with about 1 billion questions I'd ask if I ever got the chance to again. Of course, now that you're here, I can't remember any of them. Dr. Jasmine giggled nervously. Except for the dumb ones. Little Marin wants to know if cow poop has feelings. But don't answer that. I can't recall anything good. Isn't it strange how the mind works? Oh, I think that was one of them. I apologize for rambling. I really do. But yes, that was one of the questions. Isn't it strange how the mind works? I mean, you must have seen it all. She took her eyes off the road for a moment to glance down at me. I couldn't help being charmed. The mind is strange indeed, I answered. You probably know better than I do, actually. Of course, she chimed brilliantly, then paused. Wait, what do you mean? Well, it's hard for me to keep a sense of perspective. Strangeness, it requires perspective, she finished. Yes. What does the word strange mean when your whole existence is strange? I didn't say this, but thought it quietly as the sidecar kept rattling on. We were going down a wide gravel road lined on each side by tall, stocky cottonwood trees. The sun ran low in the sky, skimming their leaves with a gold-greenish glow. Up ahead, I saw a dark splotch along the side of the road where rainwater had gathered to make a puddle of muck. I saw 2 little creatures wriggling around in it, and as we got closer, I saw they were toting handfuls of gravel slop from one spot to another. Oh dear, said Dr. Jasmine. Girls? Closer still, and I could see them. 2 red-haired little girls covered in mud. When they heard Jasmine calling out for them, they came running. Suddenly, we were both being stormed on by baby sledge gremlins. They had smudged lines of dirt under their eyes like war paint. They squealed out, Miss Jasmine! The girls looked down at me. The doctor looked down at me apologetically, but I only shook my head in amusement. The girls didn't pay much attention at first to the stranger sitting in Miss Jasmine's sidecar. They were excited to share their creation, Slorp, a pig made out of mud and sticks. We proceeded dutifully to the site of Slorp's genesis and politely observed his attributes. 2 rocks were pressed into his muddy noggin for eyes, and twigs stuck out as crooked ears. His body was chiefly made from an impressively large glob of mud. Across his front, engraved proudly, was his sole name and title, Slorp, the landlord. Jasmine looked at me, hiding a laugh behind one hand. I bent down, scooped up some mud, and slapped it onto Slorp's back. The mucktax. Little Marin clasped her hands together. Slorp is happy, she exclaimed.